Alert! Alert! Sergeant Ollie breaking through the airwaves. Poets at War headquarters calling all creative forces. Our intrepid battalions continue their daring expedition through art, theology, philosophy, fun, advancing steadily despite heavy cultural resistance. According to wartime protocol, we initiate with audio intelligence straight from our officers stationed where artistic combat rages most fiercely. Urgent transmission. A general's report from our illustrious Bard-in-Chief, Joshua David Ling. His reconnaissance covers the tale trinity of The Boy and the Heron, Mist/Riven, and Hacksaw Ridge. Intelligence that could turn the tide of our cultural campaign. Thereafter, we launch our central operation. Our extended reconnaissance into metaphysical territories and metaphorical marshlands. Today's mission, orchestrated by Officer Alexander Robertson, investigates understanding everything as a gift from God. Codenamed Miracles, All or Nothing. And now, reports from the front on Poets at War. This is another Poets at War General Report. And here's your General, Joshua David Ling.
Good luck.
Good morning, everyone. It's good to see you, hear from you, which I'm not doing either of, but hi. This is another General's Report. This one's a little bit earlier in the morning than I usually do, because I have quite the busy weekend coming up. I'm headed back to Alpharetta to do some consulting work on some streaming systems, and yeah, a lot of work. Generally speaking, I have a new cup. I'm pretty fond of it. Just a basic Braves tumbler. Good for cold coffee especially. So, you know, let's take a sip. Delicious. Delicious. So, I have seen 2 movies recently, and I have had one other story I've been working through that is not a movie, but is very much a cinematic story, that I kind of felt like I need to talk about all 3 and sort of tie them together into a talk a little bit. I don't know how well this is going to work, but we're going to find out. It all made more sense in my head the other day, but maybe it'll come together. The first was The Boy and the Heron by Miyazaki, Studio Ghibli, however you pronounce that. Fantastic film. I do think it might actually be my new favorite Ghibli film. Not because it's perfect. There's a lot of things in it that are there's a lot of things in it that are not as coherent as other Miyazaki films. And he does kind of operate in a dreamscape in a lot of his movies and stuff, and I get that, but there's a lot of stuff that just doesn't land, but what does land, ooh, goodness. It is wonderful, wonderful stuff. I'm going to try to keep it mostly spoiler-free, and mostly talk in terms that people who have seen these movies will understand. Then I've been, for a little while now, off and on, watching through some Let's Plays of Myst and Riven, especially. Riven and Myst are video games by Cyan Studios, whatever they're called, and they are puzzle games that sort of have a steampunk environment with a bunch of other sci-fi mixed in. Very, very cool story series. I started getting back into it through the Let's Plays because my father played them as I grew up. And I remember seeing them and remember talking to him about them, especially Riven. Riven came out when I was around 7, so I have a much better memory of it than Myst, but I've played a little bit of Myst since then. And I also just, like I said, I've been going through the lore, and it's utterly fascinating. I might do a little bit more talk about that because people are less inclined to go into that than the other two. And the third one is Hacksaw Ridge. Just saw Hacksaw Ridge with my wife for the first time. I know it came out a while ago, but I just never got around to it until recently. And I think that all three of them, these stories have had a profound impact on me recently. I think that with Miyazaki, the idea of a motherly figure, actually a couple motherly figures, doing what they were supposed to do, was very, very beautiful. With Mist and Riven, it's a story about creating video games on the meta. It's the idea that we're creating worlds in a way, and what the consequences of that are in a very big, broad, sweeping philosophical manner, which is utterly fascinating, to be honest with you. And then Hacksaw Ridge, especially for those who have seen it, the just one more, Lord, just give me one more, just give me one more, and standing up for what you believe in the face of all adversity. For those who are wondering, yeah, no, I'm not a pacifist. I do think he was wrong to have the specific conviction that he had, but he reasoned it from scripture and held to it with full conviction, which I love. And as a result, God used that for great good. So, what can we take from all three? Kind of becomes the question. While I really want to do a much more deep dive into Mist and Riven, especially in the future, and might actually do, if I don't have a million other things come up, might actually do more of a spoilery deep dive on each of these, especially if people want to hear them. Mist and Riven, especially Riven, is continuing to teach me how much my father actually did enjoy mysteries and puzzles. And I thank God for that, because if he didn't, he would not be the first reformed part of our family back in the Reformed faith since before the Civil War. Post our last Reformed ones that I'm sure were in a Reformed church was 1700s. And we did have some Christians in there, and some that I very much think left the faith, but I'm not positive. But it is fascinating to see all of the things God has done for our family through especially my grandfather and my father. And the things that my father loved, the scripture, of course, above all the others, but looking at all the other things that he found goodness and beauty in, because he was not afraid of pagan ideas. He believed that the Bible transformed his mind and that he could have discernment. But what's more than that, he believed that God was truly the giver of all good things. And all good things, even by pagans, which I really don't know much about the Millers. For all I know, they could be Christians. The Millers who created Myst and Riven, and the other games. But it is fascinating to see in this game a character who fancies himself, especially Riven, a god. He fancies himself a god because he can create worlds by writing in a book. And his son, who does not see himself as a god, but has an incredible responsibility. I think that speaks volumes to, you know, my dad definitely wanted to see Gen, the one who wanted to see himself as a god. He wanted to see Gen get his. But he also wanted to say Catherine, Atris's wife, Atris being the one who does not see himself as a god. I know I'm jumping around, but in that story is all kinds of things. My father breaking free from Pelagian Arminianism as the son over the one who sees himself as a god. That's especially broad and very fast and loose with the text, but it's there nonetheless. Also just seeing the nature of being creative and how one can take the tendency of becoming a god and wielding power bluntly and tyrannically over their worlds versus actually trying to create something good for the inhabitants of that world, for the for other people who would visit there. Taking it up as a noble cause and seeking to do good with it. Really, really fascinating stuff. The boy and his heron playing around with really fancy time and portal mechanics, also similar to Myst and Riven. Lots of time and portal mechanics. That's sort of floating around in the leaf mold of my mind now as I've watched these things. This is how these stories all kind of resonate with me. Times and portals should be used in stories more often than not to convey a transcendental moral or emotion. Narnia did this. Hacksaw Ridge does not have the portal aspect, but Hacksaw Ridge has the transcendental aspect. There was a transcendental aspect to what he experienced, and what they all experienced through him, in regard to he wasn't fighting within their system. This is going to be real fun for anyone who hasn't read these stories, but I guess that what I'm doing is I'm really encouraging you to go and read and listen to and watch good stories that people have been recommending for a long time. Take the time to experience them. They will revitalize you as an artist. And give you new and great ideas, and take the time to really sit in them and let them become, as Tolkien would say, part of the leaf mold of your mind. I'm not sure what all I'm going to be getting out of this ultimately. I have some stories in mind now, especially for Jackie the Phoenix, which is a old story of mine that I'm revitalizing in the world of courage, my superheroes. Yeah. There's a lot there. There's a lot to explore. So take the time to explore. I think that's the point of this one, which really fits with Mist and Riven because the whole game is exploring. Miyazaki takes the time to explore. Hacksaw Ridge, there's definitely exploring. Exploring to find all the souls that may have been lost along the way, had you not stumbled across them. I've been praying, God, give me one more. My friend, Chris, who I became friends with when I was a teenager, through pro wrestling, he became a Christian when we role played together. Wasn't always good role play, but it was us trying to create stories that would help each of us. In many ways, it was a lot of my reps for what I do now. And while I don't need necessarily conversions, because I'm not an evangelist, I'm evangelical, but not an evangelist, right? What I do want is more souls to know that they're not dead yet, as Tolkien said. More souls to notice that they may be down, but they're not out. So Lord, give me one more as I'm exploring. Give me one more as I'm moving through all the death and decay in this world, trying to bring joy and thankfulness and sunshine. Lord, give me one more. That's what I'm really getting at with this one. If you're going to be moving on to Poets of War, enjoy. If not, and you're just listening to this part, be your family's bard. Do not turn to the right or to the left, and the Lord will be with you wherever you go. We'll see you next time in the trenches on Poets at War.
I am firmly convinced that Notre Dame de Paris will be in heaven.
Oh yeah,
or will be in the new earth. Like we will be able to visit after the resurrection. Notre Dame de Paris will be extant. It will exist.
This is Burnt Marshwiggle, a long-form podcast about metaphysics and swampy stuff. So hike up your waders and let's get into this mess of art, theology, philosophy, and fun.
I was burnt Marshwiggle, but my spirit's lit. Reality's a riddle, but I won't quit. Imagine the real, I choose what I feel. Narnia in my heart, that's the realest deal.
Just to recap a little bit, we're doing alternating Wednesday, Tuesdays for right now because of Brendan and Alex in particular have very different schedules at the moment, and so trying to get them both on is going to be really, really hard. The one thing you can do if you listen to a show that you're not on and you hear something you want to chime in about, just send in an MP3 file, however you can record it, and just state all your thoughts and opinions and how wrong everybody is or whatever. And I will put it as an audio log at the beginning of the episodes. Also, video is totally optional for these until the summer's out, because that's when things will start getting back to normal for Alex and Brendan, is from what I hear. And so we're going to proceed audio only on the shows for a little while. Like I said, you could do video just to be seen by everybody if you want, but you don't have to. And tonight's is Alex. He's doing the topic of miracles, and I think he has a very specific way he wants to frame that. It may or may not be a long topic. If we end up wanting to talk other stuff too, that's fine, just to fill time. We have some stuff recorded already while we were waiting for Ian. And whatever is interesting, we'll make it into the show.
Right.
So with
By
that
the way,
housekeeping, yeah, what do you got?
I am drinking ginger beer, just so everybody
Oh,
knows.
delicious.
Yeah,
I got coffee in my Atlanta Braves cup.
This is Fever Tree ginger beer. If you like spicy food, you will like this.
Oh
Yeah,
yeah,
that
Fever
sounds
Tree.
great.
Fever Tree is fantastic ginger beer.
I'm gonna get
Fever Tree and
is.
Thunderburger are the two that I commonly go to.
Bundaberger is my go-to ginger beer. That's like therapy for me.
Yeah.
I mean, this is therapy. I literally, if I don't have this regularly, my whole body decides to rebel. Trust me on this.
Yeah, I need a lot of ginger regularly too for my stomach.
Describing as chemical dependence, Ian.
Yes.
Yeah.
Awesome.
At least it's an organic chemical, right? Ginger.
It's-
That's true.
I
I mean, it's
that-
not like
there's
if I.
things happen in nature that are not.
It's
physical.
kind
So
of
after.
Go on, sorry.
Go. No, you go.
Yeah,
Yeah.
well, no, it's just now that I'm an adult and I have stressors that I didn't have when I was younger. This is like self-medicating.
Yeah.
Otherwise,
Oh,
my
yeah.
stomach acid goes crazy.
Same.
Fair enough.
So yeah,
Ginger is really good for taming your stomach.
It's good for all kinds of things, man. It's the best.
So since Joshua has his Atlanta Braves cup and Ian has his ginger beer, I decided to pour myself a glass of whiskey. So
There you go. Nice. What
No,
kind?
no.
Davidson.
Gotcha.
Mm.
All right. Well, you got the floor, my friend Alex. You've got the topic. You can moderate and do the whole nine. I'll be here.
So is whiskey miraculous?
Yes.
But no, seriously.
Any other thoughts besides yes?
To
Oh,
Hello?
you cut out a minute. Go ahead.
Oh, dang. Okay, sorry. The topic that I have today, I was put on to because I was re-listening to What's Wrong with the World by G.K. Chesterton, as I do because it's a great book that everyone should listen to or read. And there was a line in there that was something along the lines of he was arguing against a position that one of his atheist friends, I believe it was George Bernard Shaw, had taken. And he said, when it comes right down to it, the issue with the naturalists, they would readily own. They say that nothing is miraculous. The problem is that you have two different worlds and there is no in between. Either nothing is miraculous or everything is miraculous. And I thought that was really interesting. I thought that was a really interesting take that I 100% agreed with. Basically, the core thesis behind N.D. Wilson's Notes from the Tilt-A-Whirl is that
That's
everything
immediately
is
where my mind went to.
everything is miraculous. Everything is a gift of God. That this is God's spoken world is the core thesis behind that book. And the response that Wilson pushes us to is because everything is miraculous, because everything is a gift of God, the only proper response is to give thanks. Give thanks for everything. And so I kind of wanted to just see what people thought about that and how, if it is a proper statement to say that Christians should view all things as miraculous. Is that should statement valid? Is that a valid should?
Because Chesterton said it, so yes.
Fair enough. That's
Just
totally
kidding.
valid.
Just kidding. Just kidding.
That's all, folks. Anyway, no, go ahead.
Yep, that was the
So-
episode. Goodbye.
So he's coming at it partly from a Thomistic metaphysical standpoint, and I will explain that. St. Thomas Aquinas does not see creation. Most evangelicals see creation as like a one-time event, these 6 days, and then the Lord rested on the seventh, and then that was creation. Thomistic metaphysics views it as an ongoing thing. Like God is constantly creating the universe. He is keeping the universe going by his will. Every single particle of creation is part of that. And he upholds it by his power. So he's coming at it from yes, everything is a miracle. The Big Bang isn't just a one-time event. It is the creation is an ongoing thing. God is constantly creating the world that he wants.
Yep. One of the things that it's funny you went to Thomas Aquinas. Our last episode was on some more Van Til topics and thoughts and stuff, and I'm Van Tillian, but there's a lot of stuff I agree with Aquinas on when it comes to epistemology and things of that nature, like you're talking about. The ongoing creation is something Van Til would agree with. Also, the general idea that God is creating everything for the purpose of his own pleasure, which includes our pleasure as his image bearers when we're in right relationship to him, is something that I think needs to be brought up, right? If we are being, as Christians, brought into conformity to his will, which is not a monolithic will, in that there is no variance as far as his image bearers, right? We all have variance in ourselves, right? Ian is different from me, Alex is different from Ian, etc., right? But in him is all expressions of his image as far as being in conformity to his will. Now, I'm not acting in his image when I sin, right? But in all that I actually am able to be sanctified in, to follow in his footsteps in all small ways, those things, I'm reflecting him. And if I reflect him in his will, in his likes, his desires, his things that he declares good, right, objectively, then of course everything is miraculous and a gift, right? Because I didn't put myself here. He did. Right?
This is going to be a really short podcast.
Yep.
I was going to play devil's advocate too once we got around to it, but I wanted everyone to sound off first. So,
yeah.
Do you have thoughts, Daniel? You don't have to be super deep, just anything you're hearing.
No, I'm just listening.
Okay.
Yeah,
Alex.
I kind of wanted to push forward on this, like, the responsibility of thankfulness.
Say that again.
The responsibility of thankfulness.
The responsibility of thankfulness. Got it.
Yeah, because, like, it's pretty common knowledge, even among evangelicals, that one of the most often repeated commands in the Bible is give thanks. But, like, we're supposed to give thanks for everything. We're supposed to rejoice in our suffering. We're supposed to give thanks for all of that. And we're supposed to give thanks to God for it. And I am trying to figure out if the only way that actually makes sense is with a view of everything as a miraculous gift from God. Not just all the good things that happen, but also all the bad things that happen. And also all of them, like, mundane things that aren't necessarily super good or super bad, but 100% of everything is a gift from God, because everything is, by its very nature, miraculous.
Right. So the person, I can play the devil's advocate character person on this thing, you know, and if anyone is saying devil's advocate, oh, how dare you call that view the devil? I'm not. I'm just playing the other side. Anyway. Okay. So the first thing someone...
But before you say that, interesting factoid. Do you know who the devil's advocate was for the confirmation of Saint Mother Teresa?
No.
Christopher Hitchens.
Really?
Yeah, Christopher Hitchens was brought in by the Vatican to be the devil's advocate for that confirmation.
I think I
I
could
know,
have done
right?
a much better job.
Okay, sorry for that distraction. You just said that, and that's one of the weird, one of the more interesting facts that I know.
Okay. All right. So playing that position for this argument, the first thing that comes to mind as any sort of Christian who would disagree with this in any sort of way would be, are you saying XYZ horrible genocide or, Stalin, Mao, Hitler, whatever, is a gift from God, right? And
And I feel like the response to that is to say, does God tell you to give thanks for it?
Right.
To him.
Yes, but working through that in scripture, you can probably go a little bit easier. The Romans 8:28 is what initially comes to mind. God works all things to the good of those who love him and are called according to his purposes. That very explicitly in the text and in the context of that whole verse is talking about all the terrible things too. It's very explicit about God uses the terrible things to bring about perseverance of the saints, as well as their eventual glorification through fiery trials, right?
Yeah.
And you can only believe this if you believe in a sovereign God who really truly has this whole thing not just planned out, but is perfectly executing it in time and in space, right? And so with all those things being said, the answer, of course, would be yes, we are to give thanks for those things. And it's a hard thing to give thanks for. We're not discounting how hard it is to give thanks for bad things, right?
That there's a reason why it had to be commanded so many times in the Bible to give thanks for everything.
Right. I think the only two things that I would say are direct commands, more explicit, like in more enumerated, more quantitatively high, would probably be rejoice, which is a thankfulness thing anyway, and fear not. Right.
Yeah.
So I would say like those are the only two that have any competing with give thanks, right? So
Yeah.
Other thoughts on this or maybe some further tangents on where we could take this conversation?
I think so.
I had
No,
to
I
chat
think-
GPT Alex's comment about Mother Teresa and Christopher Hitchinson. I think I get it now.
Okay. What were you saying, Ian?
This is actually something I've been kind of wrestling with lately. One of my other group chats, I don't even know how the discussion got started. I was asking for prayer for some anxiety I was having at the time, which is like, a weekly thing now. Anyway, so I was asking for prayer there, and somebody brought in God's will. I don't even remember who or how that happened, but I said, well, if it happens to me, then it's God's will. And that started this whole cascade discussion that I was actually really engaged with it. Because it was getting my mind off the anxiety and making me think, oh, how can I answer this objection? And a lot of the objections that were raised, including this one, were not ones I was necessarily prepared to answer, which is the things that happen that we can call objectively evil, that are objectively not aligned with the will of God. How do we categorize those? Because God certainly allowed them to happen, but he could have very well stopped them. This goes back to that whole problem of evil thing. The trite answer is, well, we live in a fallen world. Well, yeah, it's a fallen world, but God is still in charge. How does that work? I didn't have a good answer for her, honestly. I had some decent answers that were sort of borrowed from what I've read in the Puritans and Thomas Aquinas, of course. But it wasn't anything that was truly satisfying
So, in that regard, I think the clearest answer is I don't think that there is anywhere where you can legitimately say scripturally that God did not want Satan to fall. And through Satan's fall, he accomplishes his will because Satan opposes his will. I think that's a good, simple, clear answer. I don't think it's that simple and clean of an answer overall, but I think that's a good basic answer that can allay a lot of people's worries about saying, well, of course, as the Bible says, God is not the author of sin, right? And so how can you, as a Calvinist or whatever variety you call yourself, who believes in God's sovereignty, say that he is, that he plans for sin, right? And to me, the thing you have to square that with is he creates vessels for honor and dishonor. That's also in scripture, right? The potter over the clay creates vessels for honor and vessels for dishonor. So if he's not the author of sin, how can he create vessels for dishonor? That's really the real question here. And I think it's abundantly clear when you go and look at God as the author of creation. He has a goal, and his explicitly stated goal throughout all of scripture is, I will glorify myself, says the Lord. He says that throughout the prophets. He says that in Genesis. The whole reason he starts creation is to please himself. Right? It makes him happy. This is kind of what we were talking about, Alex and I, in the Van Tillian thing. The ultimate ruling force of this universe is God's will, but his will is not some static, stoic thing. It's his pleasure. His pleasure is the thing that governs this universe. And if it did not please him to have Stalin and Mao exist and do all the things that they did, it wouldn't have happened. That doesn't mean he takes direct pleasure in those things, but he uses those things to glorify the storyteller himself. Right? He uses those bad guys, those vessels of dishonor, as his pots that he shatters, like it says in Psalm 2, I believe, if I remember correctly.
And
so,
I have that. The author analogy really speaks to me as somebody who is an author, and I had that kind of experience with this one character. I can't even remember his name, but he was a character that I created specifically because he wasn't going to have a redemption arc.
Right.
He wasn't. He was not. He was a vessel of wrath. But I really liked the character because he was a legitimately as morally
despicable
upright.
person.
He was as morally upright a person as a pagan can be.
Right.
But for the purpose of the story, he couldn't be converted.
Right.
Yep.
Right. Yeah.
And I genuinely disliked doing that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because authors legitimately do have an actual personal relationship with their characters, even the ones who are made for destruction.
Yep.
If characters never failed, if they all ended up happily ever after, you wouldn't appreciate those happily ever afters.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh, yeah, exactly. And the other night I used the analogy of a film director, which is, it's a legitimate analogy, even if you're actually an Arminian. Like, I'm going to strongman, what is it? What's the opposite of a straw man? Steel man argument, the Arminian position, even though it's not a position that I personally hold. But I have some respect for a legitimate Arminian who actually does his research.
Who's not Pelagian, who is trying to square everything in with scripture. Yeah.
Like the Wesley brothers. Legitimate Arminians. So anyway, I'm going to steel man the Arminian position. God's a film director. He has a particular vision for the scene that he's about to film, and we, the actors, have to play our part according to the script. But we do that within our own personal ability to do that.
Yep.
Yeah,
So that's
absolutely.
a legitimate analogy, whether you're Calvinist or Arminian.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. And if you're Arminian,
A very similar analogy gets brought up early on in Odyssey.
that's true. I think I know the one you're talking about. Go ahead.
No, I specifically remember whenever you brought it up on your podcast with Phil Lawler, talking about how one of the kids is talking to Wit about like this choice that she has to make, and what does God want? And Wit says, "God's the playwright. All that it's up to us is to play our parts well. And if we don't
Right.
play our parts well, then we get kicked out."
Right. Yeah. The thing that that was Courtney Vincent was the character, and she broke her leg in such a way that she might not be able to be a dancer anymore.
Yeah.
I forget the name of the episode, but it is a fantastic episode. And he takes her into the room of consequences. Wit takes her into the room of consequences, and one of the potential futures that it shows her, because room of consequences isn't pretending to be like future telling in any kind of way, but it's just a possibility, shows her becoming a world famous pianist instead, right? Which is really interesting. But there's a lot of really fascinating things when you start to look at yourself as a character in the story. Brendan's been working on, and I hope he listens to this and he can chime in with a audio log. But he and I began talking because he's writing an essay that he's working on for his channel on the idea of being a side character in life and how that can be a very noble thing. He talks about noble side characters and stuff like that. And it's looking to be a really great essay. I'm excited about it. And he asked my thoughts on things. And there was one thing that I kind of disagreed with a little bit, was that it was an antecedent more than it was a point in and of itself. He was saying, because we are given control over our lives, we should be the best characters we are. That's basically what he says. But he used the phrase, since we're the main characters of our story. And I had to say, I don't think that's true. I think we are side characters in Christ's story. And we had a little bit of a disagreement with that. If you guys wanted to talk about that, I'd be interested. But like the main thing for me is like, there's this thing that, okay, I'll go ahead and say my point. Brendan can hear it too, because he'll be listening. Are you, any of you guys, I know Alex you are because I brought it up to you recently, familiar with the Myst series of video games that started in the 1990s? MYST?
I think you've talked about it before, but that's my only knowledge of it.
Are you familiar with
As you
those?
said,
Ian?
I am familiar with it.
Are you familiar with those games, Ian?
I don't play video games.
That's okay.
I was gonna say his username is Tarzan. Do you think he knows a video game?
He's like, what's a Mario brother? Anyway.
The hilarious
okay.
thing was I went to volunteer at a Christian kids camp last year, and because I have this green flat top hat and I had this thick mustache, everybody called me Luigi.
Called you Luigi. Yeah, nice. That's great. I love that.
It was great. It was like the best 2 days of my life.
So Myst is a series of puzzle games that are basically like your character doesn't have a name. It's just you. You're dropped into this world of sort of weird steampunk fantasy world, and you have to solve a bunch of puzzles in order to complete a story. And you actually discover the story by interacting with the world. So
Does this sound familiar?
the first game involves a story where this guy named Atris has locked away his two sons, Cyrus and Akinar. He locks them both away in two different books, and essentially both of them are trying to con you into letting them out of their respective book, and act like the other one's the perpetrator and not, and so you have to like go through all these puzzles and figure out what you're going to do. So that's the first Myst game. The second one is called Riven, and very basic idea of that story is Atris's wife has been captured by his father, who is evil and thinks of himself as a god, because he and Atris and their group of people, they literally were the ones who created these worlds through writing books. They write these books and those turn into worlds. So essentially, in the meta side of this whole thing, it's a video game about people who make video games. Because these worlds are essentially like video games, right?
Interesting.
So yeah.
It's interesting that goes over a lot better with gamers than people who write stories where writers are the main characters.
Right, yeah. But the main thing that I'm trying to get at with this is in that story, the operable character is not the main character of the story in any way, shape, or form. He is a supporting character. He's known as the Stranger. I think Atris occasionally calls him my personal benefactor or something like that. But they never name you. It's not one of those games where you type in your name and they just insert it place. It's not even that, right? Like, it's just you're the Stranger, and what you decide is what happens. You never have any speaking, nothing, right? I think life is more like that than a lot of the other forms of, like, in a movie, it's very obvious most of the time who the main character or characters are, right? And so, like, there's a clear protagonist, and we're telling a linear story for the sake of illustrating something. Same with a lot of novels, same with a lot of things like that. In life, I feel like this is Christ's story. We're just dropped into it, and we're supposed to discover and pull out every single little thing about this world that we possibly can, and thank him for the goodness that is here. And that's like our main goal, is to appreciate his greatness. And by doing that, we become better characters ourselves. We become more fleshed out characters ourselves. And our story, our individual stories, are actually more glorified because of our connection to the main story. Whereas where you go the other direction, it can make your story more infamous, right? It can make your story like, I think of guys like, we obviously don't know what ended up happening with him yet, but one day we will. Howard Ashman, right? I brought him up so many times on this podcast. We don't know what happened to him, but his life is such a testament to the common grace of God that it's almost a slap in Howard's face just to say, like, I gave you all of this, right? Like, that is an ironic infamy that ends up getting slapped onto his life. And I pray that he did become a Christian and there's a happy ending to that story, but we don't know, right? So that's just one example. But yeah, I wanted to get into that and say the whole Myst thing, because going through it, I have a hard time with puzzle games. I'm not a big deep thinker when it comes to those sorts of things, but I've been watching some Let's Plays of them because it was something my dad really, really loved. He played the Myst, and then he played Riven, which was the second one. And Riven was one of his all-time favorite video games. And I always thought that it was just him. But, like, come to look at it, it's considered one of the greatest video games of all time by a lot of people. And so I'm going and watching some people do Let's Plays and stuff, and marveling at how ingenious and brain breaking some of these puzzles are, and how great the story is, So yeah, it's just a high recommend for people.
To say something that is completely not about any of the stuff that we're talking about, but is really funny. Whenever Cyberpunk 2077 came out,
Mhm.
the Babylon Bee published an article that was new Calvinist video game, just 70 hours of non-interactive cutscenes.
That's
Which I thought
hilarious.
was really funny. I was becoming a Calvinist at that time, and I thought that is so funny.
That is really funny. Oh man. Let's see. Time wise, yeah, we're nearing an hour of actual recorded time, but we're not quite there yet. Do you have any further on that, Alex, or do you want to tangent it, or what do you want to do with it?
No, I think that's a really good. I think that's a really good analogy for like where our where the free will of a where the creaturely free will of man comes in. My favorite game of all time is Fallout New Vegas. Um, and in a very real sense, you're not the main character of that either. Instead of it being a main character, though, you are like the you are the pin in deciding which of the factions is going to win.
Right.
Is the Legion going to win? This like brutal dictatorship, or are they going to win? Or are the NCR, the like old world values, Republic guys, going to win?
Right.
And you're, in a real sense, not the main character of that game. You just
Right.
decide which of the main characters wins. So
Gotcha.
I feel like I feel like that's actually a really good analogy. For the non-gamer here, choose your own adventure novels.
I was actually
Those are
going
fun.
to say. I was actually going to say Dungeons and Dragons.
That would also work, yeah.
My friend, who I go to men's Bible study with, he's a big gamer and he plays Dungeons and Dragons and Warhammer. And he said that he looks at reality as like God's D&D game. You know, God is he's the dungeon master, and the story is going to go the way that he wants it to go, but the characters are going to interact and move the story along, of course. But they're going to do what they're going to do, you know.
Right. Well,
And whenever you have a good dungeon master working with good characters, the will of the dungeon master is being done without any visible sign of it. That's the thing.
right.
That's why that analogy works particularly well, even better than the video game analogy, because whenever you have a good DM working with good characters,
Yeah.
you can't tell like you wouldn't say, oh, the DM caused that to happen. You would say, oh yeah, the characters did this and this and this, and then they did this, and then they did that and that. And the DM's like, yeah, I planned all of that.
Right.
Yeah.
This is just one of those things that seems to fall under that umbrella of our faith requires us to hold things in tension. Like, we know God is one and he is three. He is sovereign, and we are also, oh, I did a Joshua, and we are free. And so, yeah, no, it's just cool.
Yeah, that's what I said the other night. When it was, I used the terms dynamic tension and what's the other one that I used? Glorious paradox.
Yep.
See, all that is true, but I think the thing at the end of the day you have to keep coming back to is God's going to be satisfied with the end result, regardless. He plays on such a infinitely quantum level that no one can possibly gainsay him. You know, you could still throw a D&D dungeon master off and they have to reset and stuff. God never has to reset. That's where that one falls apart. But another one that comes
because
up with,
God knows not only everything that we can do, which
Right.
technically a DM does know.
Right.
If they know the rules, they know everything that you can do and everything.
Yeah, but they may not
do.
have that quantified in their mind.
Yeah.
Right.
God knows everything that we will do.
Right.
Not just everything that we can do. God
Well, he
knows
created-
for
yeah.
certain everything that we will do.
Right. And that's why I was going to get to this. Like, when you're coding a game from scratch, when you're actually making a video game, or board games too, but especially video games, right? There are variables in machines, so it does eventually break down. You know, you could have a machine that has one capacitor that's wrong, and then everything gets crazy. Like, there's atrophy, you know, whatever. But talking on a strict code level, when you are creating a character in a video game, I'm not talking about a playable character. I'm talking about any of the other characters in the game. But yeah, even a playable character to a certain extent. You are creating like their personality. You're creating all the things that they can be, all the things that they are, and all the things that they can be. And
Yep.
God actually has that to the infinitesimal degree, right? Just the absolute smallest atomic level of everything. and that's where we have to go, okay, like, he doesn't get thrown off when I sin, even when it's like me deciding to do that. He knew that from the beginning of time. The Bible's clear on that, and it's all part of his story. But he's actively performing in it and actively taking care of all of us individually, personally, all of us Christians, and helping us to persevere. It's a very real personal relationship. And I think that's where a lot of people get, they hear me talk about something like I've said George Lucas Calvinism before, right? The idea with George Lucas Calvinism is the idea of, is George Lucas culpable for the deaths of Alderaan? Of course not.
No.
Because he's on a completely different plane of existence than the characters of Star Wars.
Yeah.
God is on a
That's
completely different plane of existence than us. And people go, oh, well, that breaks down because we're not puppets. And I get that. But he is on a different plane of existence, and he has an entirely personal relationship with us.
A well-written character is not a puppet either.
Right.
No.
That's,
And we can look at each
that's the
other and
thing.
go, and we can look at even the most bland person in the universe and go, good night, they are extremely well written. You know what I mean? Like, the level of detail God puts into the blandest person in the universe is absolutely astronomical.
And I mean, I've had my characters do things that surprise even me. You know,
Oh, yeah.
I'll just, you know, I'll be writing and I'll just go, oh, I didn't expect that. Oh, this changes everything.
Wait, what? Yeah. What was it? There's a meme that my sister found years ago on, I think, probably Pinterest, that was character in a novel. Hey, are we gonna do something about this wound in my side that I got 5 chapters ago? Writer. Oh, I forgot about that. Yeah, we should definitely do something about that. It's like, okay, great, thanks. He's like, actually, that was a really bad wound. I'm not sure that you should have survived that. It's like, what? Huh? No, never mind. No, you should be dead. You should definitely. No!
That's great.
Like, a good writer's characters are not literally alive, but about as close as you can get to literally alive in the mind of the writer.
Yeah, well, you look at Leaf by Niggle, Tolkien's masterpiece short story, and he actually makes the argument that it is thoroughly possible, and within the known pleasure of God, as far as we know it in this universe, that sub-creators will be able to experience the full reality of their work. Right? He creates this character Niggle, who spent his whole life painting this one tree on this one giant canvas in his garage, basically. And when he gets to heaven, eventually, there's a lot of stuff that happens in between. You should absolutely read the story still. He goes on a bike ride and he finds his tree. And it's real. And he can touch it. And the mountains in the background and everything else that he created behind it, they're all real. and he can actually go into those mountains and explore, right? And it's just such a cool concept. Of course, we don't know this for sure. It's not something that the Bible clearly states, but it sure fits with everything that we know about the way God rewards his people, far beyond what they can possibly dream of, right? And how he rewards good, honest intentions of his saints when they are truly within his will, you know?
There's a great song by the Grey Havens. I don't remember which one particularly it is, but the last line, I'm pretty sure it's Jack and Jill Part 2. The
Yes.
last line of the chorus
Most likely.
is and we were feeling new, as if everything sad became untrue.
Yep,
Mhm.
that's the one. That's one of my favorite songs of all time.
It's such a good song, such a glorious song.
Mhm.
The way they reframe all of the fairy tales to like point towards Christ is one of the most beautiful pieces of lyricism I've ever seen. But that phraseology, that specific phraseology, as if everything sad became untrue. I think that resonates with people for a very particular reason, because there is a unity of the transcendental virtues.
Right.
Like anything that is good will be true. Anything that is beautiful will be good. Anything that is true will be beautiful.
Right.
And so the Leaf by Niggle thing, as you said, we're not promised it, but it makes absolute sense if you look at it through the unity of transcendentals. Every good story is true. Like
Yeah.
The Lord of the Rings is true.
Right.
It's true. It's not history. Like
Right.
it's not the history of our world, but it is in a very, very real sense true. And so
Right.
it would make absolute sense if the things that are beautiful, like the tree that Niggle paints, is true in the opposite of untrue that's used in that song. Like that's as if everything sad became untrue. It didn't just go away. It didn't just cease. It became untrue.
Well,
And so the
here's
beautiful thing that Niggle makes becomes true. It actually becomes a thing in and of itself.
right. And this, you know, to further argue for this Leaf by Nagel position, because you're making a good point. The other thing that we know is God does not put, let's put it this way. God does not tempt. We all agree. The Bible's clear on that. Yes?
Yep.
God does not tempt. So God, if a desire is not placed there by some other force, the inner man, Satan, etc., and we can't always know where those things come from, I get that. But if God places on the heart of anyone to create art, if that is a category that exists, then there must be a purpose for that desire. God does not do things purposelessly, right? Now, you can argue that those things that he puts on their heart, all we can know, specifically the artistic tendency, right? All we can know is it helps some people to remember what's true and beautiful and good in the here and now. We don't know what it does on the other side. Okay, we could say it at least does that. I'm okay with that. But wouldn't it make sense that if God created people with such strong artistic tendencies, people like Bezalel, people like John Bunyan, people like John Newton, and many other further characters throughout history in his story, Bach and Handel, and all these people, if he actually does that, wouldn't it make sense that there's a far greater purpose? Wouldn't it make sense that that God is getting a bigger return on the investment of putting his saints through all of the extreme pressures of the artistic tendency? Right? You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Wouldn't it make absolute sense that the investment that God is putting them through in suffering for the artistic tendency is actually for a much greater glory in the hereafter? Go on, guys. No, you can tell me later, okay? You guys are supposed to be out there playing and watching. Anyway, but yeah, that's just one of the thoughts I had. It's the, that whole tendency is to continue to create is the whole U2 thing of but I still haven't found what I'm looking for. Right? That kind of longing and wanting to see something become reality. In a very real sense, we could be, and who knows, God knows, and he has something greater than this in mind than my imagination, I'm sure. But the idea that us searching for these things in creating them could actually be helping shape the new heavens and the new earth.
Yep.
Right?
I think that's 100% true. I am firmly convinced that Notre Dame de Paris will be in heaven.
Oh yeah.
Or will be in the new earth. Like we will be able to visit after the resurrection. Notre Dame de Paris will be extant. It will exist.
Right.
Even if it burns down.
Right.
Even if it burns down again.
At the bare minimum, we will have all of time to rebuild the better one.
Exactly.
And the Hagia Sophia will be the way it's supposed to be.
There's won't. Anyway,
we will. Will we tear down the minarets, or will we take the minarets and put the banner of Christ on all of them? Who knows?
We'll put Christ shredding some electric guitar on them. Anyway. Sorry, I just had to. Just for the attitude. Anyway, go ahead.
Put some bells in them.
Yes. Turn the minarets of the Hagia Sophia into bell towers. Absolutely.
Very nice. Very nice. Alex, do you have more on that, or do you want to wrap here?
I think it's good to wrap there. I think we talked around the topic a lot, but that's not a bad thing.
We all agreed.
It was such a broad topic that I feel like talking around it is just about the only way to actually do that. We
especially when we all agreed.
Exactly. We expressed thankfulness for the world that God has made and for the reality that we live in that God made. That's exactly what the point of everything that I was asking was. So we did everything that I was hoping to.
And what is the line in the Nicene Creed? We look for the resurrection of the dead.
We look for the resurrection of the dead and the life of the world to come.
Yeah. We talked about that too. So everybody be your family's bard. Do not turn to the right. Wait. The Lord. Whoa, go ahead.
I just wanted to close out with a verse from the Sarah Sparks song, Puddle Glum's Anthem.
Yes.
You complete your plans with our broken hands. You have shown, I have seen your work, raising life up from the dirt. This I know. See that thread of sin seamlessly woven in. This I know.
That's right. This is burnt Marshwiggle where we're talking, so that works out. So anybody, anyway, be your family's bard. Do not turn to the right or to the left, and the Lord will be with you wherever you go. We'll see you next time in the trenches on Poets at War.
For more episodes of Poets at War, please visit joshuadavidling.com or check us out on YouTube, Spotify, and anywhere you get your podcast transmissions. This is Sergeant Ollie, signing out.
God of sunset